You are listening to the Overthinker's Guide to Joy, episode 75. This is the one where we're going to talk about chronic stress, what it's doing to your body, and how to say enough is enough. Let's dive in. This is a podcast for overthinkers, overdoers, and overachievers who are tired of feeling overanxious and just want to feel better. I'm your host, certified life coach, Jackie DeCrenis. Hi, friends. Welcome back. So this week, I want to talk about stress. And I use these terms sort of interchangeably. Stress, chronic stress, anxiety, being stressed out. They're all very similar. And I don't know if clinically they're all the same thing, but I do think anybody who suffers from anxiety and or stress certainly uses the words interchangeably. And I think that it's really important to talk about. It's a subject that, because it comes up so often, I feel like I couldn't do enough podcasts on this subject because it is kind of the essential core of my business, which is helping people manage stress, manage their anxiety. And because it is so near and dear to my heart, having lived through it for most of my life with chronic anxiety, I thought I would just come on today and do a podcast and just say it out loud. You do not have to live in chronic stress. You might think you do because you've done it for so long. You might think it's normal, or you've normalized it. You think it's normal to have trouble falling asleep, or you think it's normal to not be able to stay asleep, or to be tortured by vivid, troubling dreams. Or you may think it's normal just to worry all the time, to always overthink. Of course, that's what the podcast is about, but to always overthink about what's coming or what could happen next. Or worse, you think it's not normal, but it's become your normal. And I know this because it was my normal. I thought my hypervigilance and perfectionism, insomnia, nightmares, high-functioning anxiety, occasional panic attacks, chronic body aches, chronic tension, overachieving, people-pleasing, digestive issues, headaches, I thought it was all normal too. And it was very much the world I lived in for the 3 decades that I was in the television business. And I just don't know what was worse, that I normalized it and suffered it, or that occasionally I felt alone in it because I thought I was abnormal. And it was really only when I got into coaching that I realized it's really normal, but it shouldn't be normal. And what I mean by it's really normal is a lot of people suffer from chronic stress and chronic anxiety, and they just accept it as normal. When I worked in the television industry, stress, lack of sleep, and workaholism was rewarded. And look, I'm not talking about hardworking, competent, passionate, and committed. Those are all really good qualities. I'm talking about hypervigilance, people-pleasing, and overthinking all the time. I'm talking about an industry that would take of you as much as you would give them. This kind of behavior was normalized. And in a weird way, the more anxious people would be, somehow that would translate to people thinking they were more productive. But of course, they weren't allowed to complain about it. They were just to wear it as a badge of honor. Basically, you had overworked, sleep-deprived, anxious, neurotic, stressed out people. And the more they bragged about how little they slept and how much they worked, somehow they were perceived as more valuable and more awesome. And look, this isn't just true for the entertainment business. I've seen it in the tech world, the medical field, the legal profession, politics, publishing, and so many other careers that encourage this kind of perpetual stress cycle and workaholism as a sign of integrity or devotion. But just because people in industries normalize or encourage this cortisol-inducing lifestyle doesn't mean it's normal or healthy. In fact, a lot of people are attracted to these various fields because either they are adrenaline junkies by nature and or it's just been a coping mechanism for their whole life. So they're drawn to things where there's similar types of people and again, it's rewarded. But oftentimes overthinking, overworking, overdoing is a trauma response. And as children, if we're exposed to an unstable upbringing, whether that be from parents who struggled with alcohol or drug issues, or parents that were divorced or widowed, or children who suffered from abuse or neglect, this can often create these types of coping mechanisms as adults. And I've talked about this on many podcasts before in various forms. For many children who come from unstable homes, and when I say unstable, that doesn't necessarily mean broken. That just means there's an unpredictable caregiver at the helm. The children of these unpredictable caregivers might adopt people-pleasing, perfectionistic tendencies as a way to get their parents' attention and or to keep things calm at home because they were scared of the uncertainty of that parent's behavior. So I have several clients and have had several clients who are the children of alcoholics. And they often describe wanting to be perfect because they thought their alcoholic parent might love them more. Or they might talk about becoming the family people pleaser, peacemaker, to bring calm to their house for fear that their alcoholic parent might blow up at the slightest thing. So these two coping mechanisms, both perfectionism and people pleasing, are almost interchangeable in hopes for the same outcome, which is either peace, safety, and or validation. So we're talking about survival instincts as children, ways to feel safe. But when these children grow into adults, regardless of whether they maintain relationships with their parents or if their parents are no longer in their lives due to death or estrangement, the coping mechanism doesn't just disappear. In fact, they become lifetime patterns or habits. And these patterns might show up in an adult child in their romantic life or their professional life or even in their social circles. The unconscious thought, well, this worked before when they were children, then brings that into adulthood, that quote coping mechanism, because they survived their circumstances before or they managed them. So they think this is a good modus operandi. But the truth is, somewhere in their adulthood, and it shows up at different times for different people, it's going to take a toll. It's like a time bomb waiting to go off. So in some cases, the chronic anxiety that occurred in childhood may manifest in adulthood with stress-related symptoms, everything like I listed: insomnia, muscle tension, chronic headaches, digestive troubles, etc. But even in success, when high-functioning anxiety, quote, pays off, the student who gets straight A's or gets a great job, has a lucrative career, even starts a family, it still can take a toll. It just might be delayed. The mind or body can simply not stay in a permanent state of hypervigilance. Workaholics, people pleasers, perfectionists, and overthinkers will eventually burn out. And eventually it takes the form of, like I said, body pain, exhaustion, nervous breakdown. So we either break down physically, emotionally, or mentally. So how do we stop this train? Well, it starts with getting to the root of what caused the behavior in the first place. That is, digging into what and where the patterns began is really important. But then replacing those patterns with a healthy lifestyle. And I'm not just talking about exercise and eating well, although that's a very good place to start. I'm talking about learning to set boundaries in your work, your relationships, and even with your own limitations. Then it's about learning to trust yourself. Learning to give yourself validation, like the saying goes, learning to have your own back. And this doesn't mean becoming hyper independent or disconnected from those things or circumstances that you love. It means learning balance. It means giving yourself permission to make different choices. By doing so, by giving yourself permission, you can break the cycle of chronic tension, sleep deprivation, and that constant state of fight or flight anxiety. But first, we have to stop drinking the KoolAid. And what I mean by that is we have to stop normalizing chronic hypervigilance or worry. It might be common, but it's not normal. The only people who have normalized it are those benefiting from it. That's your boss, your partner, your children, or anyone else who is used to you just handling everything. Now, the good news is People in your lives will adjust to your changes. They may not like it at first. They might push back at your independence and your boundaries and your prioritizing of yourself. But in the long run, it actually benefits everyone because stress is contagious. So if you're always stressed out, chances are everyone's feeling it too. But the good news is that joy is contagious too. So if you're happier, everyone around you will start being happier as well. Coaching teaches you how to step out of that fight or flight response. It teaches you that you are worth it, that you are important. And when you work with a coach, you start treating yourself like someone you love, the same way you would treat your best friend or your child or your best client. Because the thing is, you are your most important asset. And if you're not treating yourself that way already, you most likely got a message error in your upbringing. You were told that self-care or self-compassion was selfish, and it's not. But ever since then, you've probably spent your entire life either trying to prove something to someone, even if they're no longer around to see it or judge it, but it's an old narrative that is no longer serving you. So I have 5 questions for you, and you can get a pen and paper or you can replay this podcast later. But ask yourself these questions. How does chronic stress show up for you? Where is it in your body? How does it affect your thinking? How much time does it rob you of? And how do you manage it? So what do I mean by manage it? Well, we talked about it might be in the form of hypervigilance. That's how mine manifested most of my life. Definitely overthinking for me, and probably perfectionism and people pleasing. But does yours manifest in workaholism, overspending, overeating, overdrinking, self-medicating in some other way? We often ignore the signs. We just keep drinking the KoolAid thinking this is normal or this is my normal. I dealt with chronic stress for so many decades, and I did believe it was normal. But you can choose differently. You don't have to suffer with chronic anxiety or stress, being an 8 or 9 on your pain scale, whether that's emotional or physical. You can learn to turn down the volume. You can choose to control it rather than let it control you. So come work with me, and I will help you get off this anxiety roller coaster. I'm giving you permission to prioritize yourself and live a less anxious life. You deserve to feel better, and that's what having your own coach does. It gives you a place to talk through the patterns of thoughts and behaviors that are no longer serving you, and it gives you an alternative way to live differently. All right, friends, if this message resonated with you today, if any of these things feel like I'm describing you, I encourage you to contact me through my website and let's talk. Whether you sign up for my newsletter or you just continue listening to these podcasts or you choose to work together on a one-on-one basis, I want to help you. So help yourself by reaching out. All right, I will talk to you soon. Have a great week and bye for now. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Overthinker's Guide to Joy. If you're enjoying these episodes, please subscribe or follow this podcast so you can always be in the know when the next episode drops. If you would like to learn more about working with me as a coach, you can connect with me through my website at JackieDeGrenis.com. That's JackieDeGrenis.com.